sharing our stories connects us. Listen and be connected. Join us for the Conversation meeting weekly at the intersection of community and culture. Hosted by Mario Nunez and Joe King Carter. Joe King Carter. I just love the way that sounds. Whenever it comes on, I get excited. It's Wednesday, everybody. And if it's Wednesday, it can mean one thing and one thing only. This is WMNF 88.5 FM. And you're about to listen to The Conversation. Again, my name is Mario Nunez, and as you heard in the intro, Joe King Carter is my broadcast partner. Joey.
Yes, sir.
What's going on, kid?
Joe Mama. That's me.
I love it. I love it. Let's ring a bell for Joe's mama.
There we go.
Who, by the name we've talked about on this show before.
Yes.
Lovely lady.
Lovely lady.
Honey
In
Howden?
fact, yeah, Honey Howden. In fact, I was going to say that right quick off the top that Shelley Reback's Midpoint today was an excellent show, and she addressed grieving and loss with others on the show. I thought it was excellent. And this time of the year is a lens in which the magnification of emotion becomes high, and some people who do not get to experience just nothing but pure joy and love, experience depression and loss. And I just want to say to everybody out there that my mother, Honey Howden, who was the center of my universe, passed many years ago in a September. And that Christmas, I didn't have Christmas. I was in pain. And I understand what pain is like. And I just want everybody out there who's listening, I hope if this helps one person, it's worth saying, is that be kind to yourself during this time of the year. You're going to be in compression. You're going to be in family settings, possibly with political adversaries. Take a chill pill. Be kind to yourself. Be good. And remember that what Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, all of these moments in our lives are going to be about love and connection. That's what it should be about. We should love each other, and we should seek to be connected wherever we can.
Hear, hear. Let's ring a bell for Joey right there. Thank you, Joey.
Thank you, sir.
Words to consider, certainly words to put into practice. We are rapidly approaching the end of the year. And next Wednesday, I mean, so it's a little unique and odd that this year Christmas falls on a Wednesday. And New Year's Day will fall on a Wednesday, so that, I don't use that phrase too often, but we will be here on the air. We are not going to shun our duties and our responsibilities.
We're not running away, folks.
No.
We're going to hold your hand through those events.
Yeah, we are leaning in. So we will be here next week for Christmas and the following week for New Year's. We are planning some really unique and interesting conversations. So please, take a little time to be with us each week like you do, but especially on Christmas Day and especially on New Year's. Joey, thank you for mentioning Shelley's show. All of the broadcasting programmers here at WMNF do a pretty fabulous job.
Absolutely.
All of us volunteers. We come in here of our own volition.
Yes.
The pay isn't great, but what the heck? If they take it away from us, it's not that much anyway.
No, the pay is great. It's just not monetary.
Absolutely. Because we get hugs. When we come in, we get hugs, we get thumbs up, we get high fives, and really that's what you're looking for. That lends itself to the connection that you were mentioning just a moment ago. So thank you to all of our listeners. As always, thank you for those that tune in on Facebook to kind of watch us here on Facebook. And the technological challenges that we have on Facebook is that we're not quite bringing in the sound from the sound bus. So we're working on that in the new year. We're going to have that available so you can watch us and hear the callers as well. We know the challenges that we're facing. Joey?
Yep, that's it. We're working to that end, and eventually our Facebook feed will be absolutely professional.
Off the chain. It'll be off the chain in every regard. So today's guest, wow, you're in for a special treat. We've known each other now for a little bit, Eddie, over a year, because we met through the Commodore Theater Group, who we've had Justin and Kelly on here with us before.
Yes, indeed.
And both of them are wonderful human beings, as is our guest today. So let us introduce you now to a young man, and I say young man because he is. He's 40-ish. He'll tell you that. And Eddie Geller, thanks for being in studio with us, my brother.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, Eddie, not to be confused with Uri Geller.
Right?
No relation.
The mentalist?
The mentalist who could bend spoons at a distance.
Let me also ask you this.
Have you
Eddie.
ever bent a spoon, Eddie?
I have Accidentally, but not with my mind.
Have you ever hung one from your nose, Eddie? Because, some of us do that, too. That's
right.
I believe I have done that. It's been a while.
It's a party trick. It's a party favor. So, have you, by any chance, off topic, Eddie, I mentioned the word mentalist. Mm-hmm. There is a mentalist presently going around and entertaining all of us, from players in the NFL to movie stars to just everybody that he can stand in front of. I believe he's got a show in Vegas as well. His name is Oz the Mentalist. And if you've not, OZ, and if you've not seen any of his work, it is super impressive. He does things, of course, I don't know how he does them, but they're those kinds. It's not sleight of hand. It's not those kinds of tricks. It's the kind of trick where, he asks a room full of NFL players to pick a number and do this and that and the other, and then he reveals inside of an orange that he's got in his pocket that card with those names. I don't even know how that works. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, there we go.
Eddie G.
Eddie.
Yes.
So Eddie, let's start in the very beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Clearwater. So I was born in Long Island, New York, but my family moved down to Florida when I was 1.5 and moved to the house I grew up in Clearwater when I was about 4 years old.
Okay, so we're going to count you as a native.
Yeah, I think that counts.
I think so too.
Yeah.
A year and a half?
Year and a
you
half.
have no frame of reference from Long Island?
None.
It's all right here, Florida native.
That's right.
All Florida, baby.
If you remember the first time you crossed the bridge, we'll give you bonus points for that, Eddie. I'm just going to say. You weren't born in Tampa, but you got here as soon as you could.
So how did that, what brought your family here, and how did that those early days go for you?
Well, my dad came down here for work, and my earliest memories, so I grew up in the countryside area in Clearwater. Remember going to Lila Davis Elementary School, Safety Harbor Middle School, and I know you guys prepared me. We're gonna dig deep, and so I'm already. That's my head is already preparing to dig deep.
Very granular. Very granular.
We want to get down to the.
What was your favorite lunch at your elementary? No.
I mean
we won't go that far.
I love those fried chicken sandwiches. I mean, so unhealthy.
And the sourdough buns. See, when we're a little bit older, Eddie. So they made the bread buns. Those buns, they made them the lunchroom ladies made those every day. And they were yeast rolls, and they were incredible because you could smell them, from first period on.
By the way,
ahead,
Can you
tell I'm hungry, Eddie? Can you tell I haven't had breakfast?
Do you want a cookie?
Thank you.
Did you have blondies?
Well, we should talk about blondies.
No. I'm talking about a food.
Oh, I'm sorry. I digress.
They made, we have brownies.
Yes.
They made a vanilla version of brownies called Blondies.
That was in Bradenton. Of course they made those in Bradenton.
Yes,
because you had a lot of blondies in Bradenton. Yeah. Eddie, take it from there, Eddie.
I do love blondies as well.
So you know what they are?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
For sure. No, but my defining memory of being a child, and I had a lot of lovely memories as a kid in Clearwater, Florida. I was, and there's not that there's anything wrong with this, I was the fat kid. And so that was sort of my definitional.
I so relate, Eddie. I so relate.
And again, I think as an adult, I certainly whatever body people are in, great, but as a kid, made me this outsider.
A little self-conscious.
Self-conscious. And, I've realized, and I've thought a lot about it, I wasn't someone who was necessarily picked on a ton. I certainly was, heard, mean names now and again. But you just become a non-entity. I found my existence to be as a kid, and so I'm sure we're gonna talk a lot about comedy, but I think that is the centerpiece of my comedic existence.
You used the phrase, not that there's anything wrong with that. Everybody can recognize that Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, of course. So there's anything wrong with that.
But as it relates to your early life, being heavy, portly, chubby, big size when you're a little kid, Husky, remember that?
Heard
Joe?
that all day. Big boned.
There was a clothing.
There was a
style. It was a style.
Yeah, there were pants called Husky pants.
Correct. So if you were a big child, they're right away out the box. Things start to happen to you that can either make or break you, right? Because if you're the last one picked for the kickball team, or whatever it is that maybe you don't get to sit at the. I'm using air quotes for those of you watching at home. Yeah. The cool kids table, that kind of stuff. Whatever that is. So either you're going to retreat into your, your safe place, or you're going to come out and say, you know what, I'm going to use this.
Yeah.
I'm going to beat you about the head and shoulders with it. I'm sure Jackie Gleason, who was always a big kid, you know what I mean? He didn't shy away from it. So, yeah, continue.
So, explain a little bit how you see that's at the center of why you eventually became a performer.
Well, I think it's, you want to be, and again, to use a phrase that I think will be, I might use again and again, is to be seen, you know, to, you know, when I don't want to be known as the fat kid. So if I make jokes and people think I'm funny, you know, then I'm the funny kid first, you know?
Yeah.
And so that is a thing that as a child, and even before I think I even realized it, I was making jokes in class and, you know, trying to make my classmates laugh. And my parents have even told me, like, teachers, they would go back and say, oh, Eddie was, like, so funny. And, like, I don't even remember, like, in maybe elementary school, like, sort of making jokes, but I think it was a thing that I did from a young age. And I'm Jewish, so it's in our
DNA. It's in the DNA. Let's ring a bell for the Borscht Belt comedians, you know, of the early years, the Shecky Greens, you know what I mean, the Jackie Masons.
Well, it's a tradition of processing pain.
There you go.
In Jewish culture, I think, to have humor, and I think that's very common. And so, but let me ask you this: you are today a person who is not at all heavy, if not maybe even thin.
Yeah.
How long did this go on for you in your childhood?
Up until I moved to, not to jump too far ahead, but up until really I moved to Los Angeles. This was after I'd graduated college. I went to school at the University of Florida.
Oh, okay. So
Go Gators.
So your body identity as a overweight person was all through your formative early adulthood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's still it still has not gone away. I'm not blind. You know, people can't see me, but I'm a relatively thin person, but I will always struggle with eating and food and my weight.
Yes.
And
is that why you turned down that cookie this morning I offered you?
I would.
Come on, Eddie.
No. But it's something I will always be, I think, conscious of.
Sure.
And I think in some ways, not to sound too negative, but being thin feels like a poison chalice, at least for me. Mm-hmm. And I have not taken any weight loss drugs, and people who do, like, bless you if that's what works for you. But I absolutely see the appeal to take a drug and not have to think about food and then to lose weight, because I still think about food all the time, you know, and what I'm going to eat and all that stuff.
The phrase Ozempic
right.
comes to mind, right? I mean, because if it's easier to just stick a needle in your leg and shoot something in there that's going to help you curb your appetite or in some way conquer your sugar cravings, whatever that is, I don't know. But we do know this. It's an unhealthy lifestyle to stay with it for too very long, right? So if you can get over it at an early age, and a lot of times it happens where you hit puberty, Eddie, and then things happen hormonally in your body where you change, and maybe you'll lose the weight that way. You know, you might have been a little chubby little kid, but then, you know, or you discover the gym, or you discover the opposite sex, whatever the motivation is, you kind of get to a point where you're happy. So you went all through your high school years, even through college?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I
can't see that, Eddie. I'm looking at you.
I'll send you some pictures.
Please do.
We can, if there's a place to post them, we can post them as well if the public is interested. Mm-hmm. But no, when I was a freshman in college, I'm 5'9" now. I weigh around 155 pounds, and I was 250 pounds. Again, there's this, like, I say these things like it was not bad, you know, like it was not a body that I was comfortable in.
There you go.
And so, you know, I've tried many different diets and ate a lot of different ways. And I think I have at this point come to some peace with how I eat, but it does require me to think about it all the time.
Yeah, you can never certainly let go and say, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Now, so let me ask you this then, as someone else who is also, I think I can characterize this as a class clown. Yes. Right? Okay, I get it. So how long were you the class clown? Did this follow you through high school and into college?
Oh, absolutely. It really took flight when I was in high school. So when I was in high school, I did the morning news show. We at Countryside High School, they had actually a great morning news program, and I recorded skits that aired on the show. And then I was an anchor, and I was terrible, by the way. There are some videos of me, and I was like, why did I get picked to do this? I'm so bad at reading these morning announcements.
Kind of how it starts, though.
Yeah. It's like, Mrs. Schuler's class will be taking and it's like, oh my goodness. But yeah, so I did those skits, but then in class, as I was, I think, frankly, like very depressed, would just try and amuse myself, and became less of a good student as time went on because I just didn't care. But and started doing stand-up actually at the end of high school. So my senior year of high school, I did my first stand-up set at Coconuts Comedy Club in St. Petersburg.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That first feedback from the audience is super intoxicating. We've talked about that before. It changes. It's a game changer, right? It changes at a fundamental level how you see yourself, certainly when you look in the mirror, and where you might see your career path. Because if it's something that really resonates with you naturally, then you just want to do more and more of it. It's a good drug in a way.
It feels so good. And I think a lot about, too, I will always remember it's a small stage at this comedy club, the 2 steps I took to get on those stage. And I remember, like, my eyes down, looking at my feet, stepping on those steps and being like, what am I doing? I couldn't believe that I was actually doing it. And now I look back, I think those are, like, maybe one of the most foundational moments of my life. Because once I knew I could do that I could be an 18-year-old idiot and tell jokes in front of people. I was like, well, what else is there to be scared of? And not to say I'm like certainly not the bravest person in the world, but I've run for office.
Yes, you have, and we'll get to that in just a little bit.
And and it's so it just sort of taught me at a young age, like, there's no reason not to, like, be brave and try things.
Plus, nothing is more there's nothing more confirming of self, I have found over time, is when you can make somebody laugh.
Yeah.
That's
the best gift you can give them. It's the best gift. It's the best gift you can give someone.
And I think all people have their own sense of their humor, and many people like to tell jokes and be funny and be clever and witty and all that great stuff. But when you do it in front of more than a few people, 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, it's a very different experience, and I understand it completely. Yeah,
Eddie, let me ask you this, because we don't want to go too far in advance without discussing the rest of the nuclear family. So siblings are also important in the dynamic. Growing up, if you've got brothers and sisters and everybody's kind of entertaining, or I'm just thinking about like Ben Stiller, for example. Stiller and Mara were his parents. He had a sister. But I mean, Billy Crystal was entertaining his family as a young child, both Jewish comedians as well. I don't know why I went to those two. Very talented. But you are as well, Eddie. Any siblings?
Yes, I have an older brother and older sister. And my brother and sister are both hilarious. My brother's more kind of quiet, will make a quip, but not too attention-seeking. My sister, on the other hand, whom I love dearly, my best friend, did stand-up comedy as well.
There we go.
Right after our mother passed away in 2005, at the end of 2005, it was like this switch had flipped for her. We had all been through this traumatic thing, and then she was like, I'm going to do stand-up.
Hopefully they're listening today.
Yeah, I hope so too. I will absolutely.
Make sure they get a chance to listen to it.
Catch it in archive.
Yeah.
Yes.
This will be a good time to mention, listen, if you've got a question for Eddie, or you'd like to just kind of communicate with us here on the conversation, the phone number you can call us is 813-239-9663. Always send us a text at 813-433-0885. Emails welcomed, as Jessica Green is waiting for your emails to read them on the air. DJ@WMNF.org. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. So it's kind of in the family a little bit then.
Yeah, there's a sense of humor there for sure. My dad, and I'm excited for him to listen as well. Not as much of a jokester,
right.
But
not everybody can be. You need somebody to have a steady hand on the tiller.
Just a generous, kind, loving man. My mom, I mentioned briefly, passed away in 2005 from ovarian cancer. I only realized after she passed away that she was actually quite funny herself. I remember I was going out to LA, and this was, close to her passing, or that was my plan to move to LA. And I said, I want to be an actor, comedian. And she said, what about something in lighting? And I was like, light? What are you talking about? Why would I do something in lighting? And she's like, because those people have jobs.
Right.
And I'm just like, she's just like, yeah, just would have these cutting great comments that she was so funny. And, I don't think I appreciated, because I was kind of a teenager, in my own world, but yeah, definitely.
Mom was very pragmatic.
Yeah.
How about something in hair and makeup? They're always working.
Craft service.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Right. So now, so you end up at at Coconuts.
Yes.
And how long did that experience continue?
So that was towards the end of high school. So I went back for a few more open mic nights, towards the end of my high school career. And I think, and from a young age, I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. That had been...
Come on, that's the gold standard.
That was the...
50 years this year, right now.
Yeah. And so I then graduated, went to the University of Florida, and when I got there, someone had told me, oh, there's an improv comedy class. And I had never done improv. I hadn't really, I'd done some of the TV, film stuff, but never done anything theater. And I was like, well, I'll take the class. I mean, it sounds like improv comedy. I did stand up. And as soon as I took improv at the University of Florida, I was like, my world exploded. I was just immediately like, these are my people.
My tribe. Found your tribe.
This is it. And I still, I would still do some stand-up even when I went out to LA, but discovering improv comedy and Theater Strike Force at the University of Florida, I just fell so in love with it, and the collaborative,
spontaneity of it all.
Spontaneity, is incredible.
So let's drill down a little bit into that, because now when we had Justin and Kelly on here, we talked about this a little bit, and I'm kind of intrigued by this. They said almost identically the same words you just said, and what I find interesting is that there must be something happening, and Kelly really sort of unearthed this in an emotional way. There's something going on there that has to do with transactional analysis and Freudian. There's stuff going on there in which, in that process of the spontaneity of that kind of improvisation, something happens, doesn't it, to you?
Yeah, I mean,
it's like it rewires your brain, doesn't it?
It really does, and I think the part about discovery on stage and discovery with your partners is such an important piece of it too, because I actually don't find myself watching a lot of stand-up or comedic movies. I don't think they're that funny. But to be on stage and then to realize in the moment, oh, this is where we should go, or this is the character I should be, or they, it's such a beautiful thing and is just so rewarding.
But isn't it also like being... So here you are, you're this overweight kid, you want to be seen.
Yeah.
I so relate to that.
Yeah.
Then you're on stage in which you have no guard up, no defense, no wall. Somebody says to you, and what did you do with the raspberries? And you got to go, right? Isn't it kind of like being naked?
I never...
Aren't you really exposed in a way?
It's funny. And we obviously all experience our own arts and in our own way. I actually never felt that from improv. I never feel naked on stage when I'm doing improv. I'm, not that I don't get nervous and don't have that moment, but that feeling of nakedness is not something that I actually feel a lot. It's just, it's so... it can be frustrating, and I can feel lost, but it's not quite naked
because you're letting it all hang out.
I think that we kind of feel the essence of what you're describing to us.
Yeah.
I don't think Eddie is ever naked or he ever exposes himself on stage. Thank you. But I do want to mention something that Justin said on the show that has resonated with me, and it stayed with me, and I continue to kind of use it as a touchstone, and I go back and I think about it. I want you to comment on it.
Yeah.
Because he said that the specific kind of improv comedy that you guys do, which is created in the moment, and for anybody that wants to kind of see what it is that we're talking about, because we're talking about it, but to see it is really something special at the Commodore Theater. He said that it takes a couple of things. It takes... And this is why I think that you're never naked on stage, because it takes intellectual fluidity and innate charisma. And if you break both of those down, in my opinion, innate fluidity, or I should say intellectual fluidity, means that you're just witty, bright enough to be able to handle the conversation in that real time, right? Whatever the topic is, we got this. It's intellectual fluidity. And then innate charisma, well, not everybody has that, certainly. And I think you've got both of those in spades, Eddie. So that's why you're never really fully disarmed on stage, because you've always got that with you. So speak to that. I mean, because I thought it was incredible what he said.
I think I am very flattered, and I'd like to think I have those things. But so yes, and to take an improvism. I think also it's, and I'm sure they touched on this, it's the deep listening and the focus on both what you're doing and, more importantly, or just as importantly, what your partner's doing, and that's where my mind is always at. And I think one of the things, because I stepped away from improv for a long time, came back to doing it at the Commodore, and when I used to do it, I was like, oh, you get taught you go through all these improv classes, and you're like, oh, this is how you do it. You got to focus on where the status is, and what's the and all these things. And it's like, what is your partner doing? What are you doing? Are you paying attention? Are you paying close attention to that, and can you build off that? And that's maybe a little far afield from what exactly you were talking about.
So that's acting.
I mean,
you're being an actor.
Yeah.
But in response, though, to whatever the action is that's happening in front of you, and that's where the listening attentively skills come in.
Yeah, and that's when I teach improv, and I talk to the students about why I think this is such a beautiful art form. It's because so much of it translates to real life, which I think is even more important to the skills it gave me. To be someone who's looking at your body language and saying like, oh, you're trying to smile, you're not quite smiling. Like, is there something wrong? Do we need to talk about it? And then it's like, oh, now we're off. Now we got, and that is a life skill to know when maybe someone's not comfortable or someone's, and to be able to navigate that.
Right.
And then to be on stage and just to be like, oh, you're holding your hands together. Like, I can tell you're nervous. Like, we can, like, it's all right. Like, it's just a funeral.
So last Friday, when we did Salute and Happy Days, and you were there doing your thing with your troupe, and it was amazing, and it was another great night at the Commodore, and you jumped up on stage in Act 3, I believe it was, and you laid down on stage. I thought I knew what you were trying to accomplish, but were you hoping that the rest of the group knew you were trying to simulate a pothole?
I think they gathered.
And that's what you were doing, right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, you, without provocation, you jumped up on stage before anybody else got up there, and you laid down in kind of a circular form because the discussion before that was this talking about potholes.
Right.
I just thought it was brilliant. But if it goes up there, if you do that, and then it falls flat, or they're not quite sure what to make of it, or is he a dead body? Has he had a seizure? What's going on, Eddie?
Yeah, you sort of.
But your comedy troupe picked up on it.
Yeah, you do enough with the same people. You learn that language.
Unspoken.
That unspoken language. And to your point, we just talked about potholes. Now he's like on the ground doing a circular, like trying to be a circle. Like, he's going to be a pothole. So.
Absolutely.
So you're not. So let me also ask you this: when you're in that improvisational place, you are in this. You have to be. I'm hearing you say you have to be really in the moment.
Yeah.
So you're not really thinking about where this is going to go.
Right. When I will say that there's a little bit of nuance. When you're off stage, for folks who've never seen a show, and I hope you do come see a show at the Commodore Theater. But a lot of times, we'll have monologists who are telling stories, and when you're on the side, you're not on the stage performing yet. You're listening, but you're also like, oh, there's a character idea, or there's a story.
That would be funny.
Yeah. So that's to your question. You do have to have, that's a little bit of a skill you develop, like, okay, bank an idea or two. Okay, now I'm focused on listening. And then when I step out onto the stage to perform the character, perform the scene, then I'm not thinking about where it's going. I'm thinking about what is happening, what was just said.
And so tell everybody again, just real briefly, what the Armando method is like. You just alluded to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the Armando is a form in improv comedy where we will have one speaker, one monologist, and they will come on stage. And you can do it a couple different variations, but essentially they come on stage, they tell stories. They get a suggestion of anything in the world, and they just start telling stories from their life, or they start giving an opinion.
Answer questions in an interview,
give an opinion on something, and they will talk for maybe 5-6 minutes, and then the improvisers, the cast members on the side of the stage, will take those stories, take those opinions, whatever, and turn them into comedic scenes.
And it's brilliant the way it happens in real time. So do you ever, I'm always curious about this too, Joe. And Joe and I have had the privilege of being monologists for the Salute and Happy Days show.
Great.
So thank you for that. So this is just a mutual admiration society over here. So I'm curious, right? Because again, you work with the same comedians, the same improvisational actors, improvisers, pretty frequently. There's a core group of you. Do you guys, because when you jump up on stage and you grab the chair and you put the chair in front of you, and then one of your troupe members jumps up there with you, they don't necessarily know where you're going right away. Do you guys ever make eye contact with each other and go, let's do that one? Or like wink at Liz and say, follow me. Jump up there with me. Let's do this because I know you're going to be good at this with whatever I'm about to do.
Sometimes you will point at someone that can be just a sign that you want them specifically.
Got you.
Or because either you just want their vibe, or to your point, they'll get you, or maybe they had done a particular character earlier in the show, and so you want to bring that character back. And so
that's how you work the magic. Because just like any good stand-up, Joe, and we've all seen incredible stand-up comedians that go for 45 minutes to an hour.
Right.
They'll usually tie in what they did in the first 15 minutes in the back end, and that's the brilliance of comedy. You know what I mean? You're telling a long story with punctuations, but when you can bring it back in and go, oh, that's the key.
Yeah. Well, the intriguing part of this is collaboration for me. For me personally, if I'm performing, I conduct history tours in Ybor City, and basically I do a one-man show. That's what I'm really doing.
It's a performance of sorts.
And I'm completely comfortable with how all that goes down. But collaborations are partnerships, and some people are not good at partnerships, by the way.
We know that.
And we know. I've done things, that was a mistake. But this process is the collaboration is live, on the spot, happening right in front of you, and that fascinates me.
Yeah, it can be really magic, and to your point, it can also absolutely fall on its face.
Yes, and that's another kind of wonderful part of it.
I wonder.
Occasionally it fails, and you get to see that.
Yeah,
and see how the actors handle it. I wonder sometimes when. They talk about the fourth wall. I wonder when some of you guys will look at each other and go, "Is that what we're doing here? Are we doing? Is that where you're going with this?" Because I know listening. Okay, that's him being real, talking to his fellow actor. I don't understand where you're going with this. Yeah. And you guys do it in a way that has a plum. It's not embarrassing. It's just like, okay, do we tack away from this now and go somewhere else? Does that happen for real?
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully when you're playing with folks that you've done a lot of improv with,
nobody gets their feelings hurt.
Nobody gets their feelings hurt, and it doesn't happen that much. But sometimes, you're just like, where I have no idea where you wanted with this. And part of, you're talking about the secret languages, you kind of assume someone has an idea. And so when you're you're like giving them this deference, okay, what's your idea? And then you have no idea, they're trying to communicate it, and you're like, I don't understand what your idea is, but I want to do it. And and then you just end up, everyone almost is too polite, and that can end up falling in your face.
This past week, you were particularly randy, particularly raunchy, particularly adult in your language usage, and I thought it was delicious.
Oh, there we go, folks.
Because typically it's not.
Come down and get some randy at the Commodore.
But it was NC-17 all the way, and I thought it was hilarious because we hadn't, that was kind of a departure a little bit, but it was like right there in your face, like, what the are you talking about?
Yeah.
It was great. Let me do a station ID. We'll come back on the other side and complete the conversation with Eddie Geller, our guest today.
Hey, this is Sam from the Wednesday Morning Show. You're listening to The Conversation with Mario Nunez and Joe King Carter on WMNF 88.5 FM.
And let me give you that number again. It's 813-239-9663. You can send us a text always, 813-433-0885. And emails are welcomed always, dj@wmnf.org. And we've got operators. In this case, it's Jessica Green.
Yes.
She's standing by and ready to read your email.
And thank you, Sam. Love you, Sam.
Sam was great last week.
She was.
Sam was great last week. So if we had Sam and Eddie on the same show, we wouldn't get in a word edgewise. Brother, I'm just telling you right now.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Did you have another question for Eddie?
Well, the other thing that I enjoy doing, I will tell people this up front, is that when I have gone to those Salute and Happy Days, I hear the monologist stories. They go off. You guys pop up, and I think to myself, I wonder if they're going to talk about I wonder if they're going to do something on the green peas. Because I'm actually trying to anticipate.
You're listening too. Yeah, you're listening, anticipating.
Oh, I'm listening too. Yeah. And there must be, obviously, there are hot button things. If a monologist comes on and says, and then I was abducted by aliens, I think we're going to be doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So if I find that all interesting as well. So.
Well, when Ron Weaver was on there a few weeks ago, it was very impressive because Ronnie was unchained that night. It was like when he came in, he's somewhat reserved normally, but this night he was completely unfettered, and it was funny because Justin was interviewing him, and Justin sat him down. Everybody, this is Ron Weaver, and he asked a simple question like, Ron, well, how long have you been in Tampa? Ron did 20 minutes. And then at that point, I looked at Kelly and I said, oh, Kelly, what are you going to do with this now?
What's happening here?
You know, it's too much. It's like drinking out of the proverbial fire hose, you know. So you got to really, if you're the monologist or the person being interviewed, you want to give them short little sound bites,
right.
Be entertaining, be brief, be bright, and be gone so that the actors can get on there and do their stuff so it doesn't get buried. That was a fun night, though, wasn't it?
That was a lot of fun.
Ron brought props. He had a hat. He had a sign.
I think we were all on the side of the stage trying to figure out what the heck we were going to do.
What do we have here?
What do we have? It was, you know, but we made it work, and that was a really fun show.
And it was well attended. I mean, there were a lot of folks there that night. Hey, is there anything that you haven't done yet, Eddie, that you're looking forward to doing? Let's kind of broaden the lens out a little bit and see what's in the future for Eddie.
Well, performance-wise, I've been learning piano, and so I want to do some piano musical performance, very inspired by
Victor Borges. Come on now. Should we ring a bell for him? He was great, was he not? Eddie, you know that reference?
No, I don't know that reference.
You got to look it up.
No, it's
I got to look up Victor.
I actually, from a few years ago, Bo Burnham, the comedian's special on Netflix, Inside. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, just an incredible meditation on being locked up during COVID, and also a lot of self-flagellation. I don't know. It's just brilliant. So I'm learning piano. Something I want to do for performing. But another thing that is bittersweet to share is I'm only in Tampa for another month and a half. I'm actually moving to Orlando at the end of January.
Oh no!
I know.
Yeah. So.
I feigned that disappointment, Eddie, because I knew that.
I know, but it still hurts.
It still does. It does. The realization of you not being that close to us.
But I think
Orlando's not that far away.
And Eddie, I think an Eddie Geller is the kind of a person that will rise to the occasion no matter where
he'll come back.
Yeah. Well, no, he doesn't have to come back. Wherever he goes.
He will, because he promised us he was still going to be doing Salute and Happy Days.
True.
So we will get our Eddie Geller fix once a month, if not more frequently.
Now, you said you're learning.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You're learning piano?
Yeah, so I'm learning piano, which is a lot of fun. And I think one of the things, having done stand-up and having done improv, the thing that I've been scared to always do is perform music on stage. And I played guitar for a long time, but never, I think one of my worst traits is I have a very large inner critic. And so, I would write music and be like, oh, this is terrible, and not do it. So I think that's the thing I'm trying to push past. And I think actually performing at the Commodore has just, sort of reignited my confidence that, like, hey, go try it. Like, why not?
Why not?
And if nothing else, you can put an arrow over your head and make balloon animals like Steve Martin did. But what people don't realize about Steve Martin is he was quite the accomplished banjo player.
Still is.
Very talented.
And juggles, and he does all kinds of things. So these guys are not just one-dimensional.
Right.
They do a lot of different things.
By the way, I think taking on piano at this stage of your life, I have to tell you that I took 2 years of piano when I was a kid, and my instructor was a large German woman whose name was Miss Kissinger, and all she kept saying to me constantly was, your hands are too small. Your hands.
Too small.
They're too small. And I was like, what am I supposed to do about that?
Hey, we've got a caller on the air that's been holding for a few minutes. Let's see what they have to say. Simon in Lakeland. Hello, Simon. What say you, sir?
How you doing? This might be a little esoteric, but first of all, let me introduce a thought here. A gentleman by the name of John Cage, who did a performance art. It was called 4 minutes and 33 seconds back in the 50s.
Yes, I know of John Cage.
It's been performed worldly, and the gentleman sat down at a piano, lifted up the keyboard, did not play a note for the 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and it was primarily an interpretation of silence as the audience sat doing nothing but listening to the surroundings, so it was very individual. What I'm getting at is when you're a thespian, there's no true art form within the character, because you have the stereotypic interpretation of what the director or what the thespian thinks should be portrayed in that particular role. How do you remove that? How do you become absolute so that you can then touch more people?
Simon, great question. Always thought-provoking. And we will take you off the air and you can listen now. Thank you, Simon, so much.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, Simon, I love that example, and I had not heard of that.
John Cage.
John Cage. You know, I haven't thought about it necessarily in those terms, but I do think how we are able to subvert expectations is something that is, you know, I mean, that's inherent in improv and inherent in comedy. But I also have a lot of a desire to like perform the expectations as best as possible, as laid out by the form. And I'm very interested, not that, you know, 4-minute 33 silent piece in front of a piano is not very well thought out and has something to say. Mm-hmm. I'm really interested in, can I put together a chord structure that is catchy and powerful and interesting lyrics? So I think personally, I'm very interested in how to make the form work and how to make it, no pun intended, sing. So I think it's really like, what do you want to say as an artist? And either the forms, you know, whether it's a play or it's an improv show, it's a song, like work for what you're trying to say, or what you're trying to say requires you to subvert those expectations to make your point. And I think either of those are great.
So using your piano as part of your medium, are you seeing that as a comedic approach or just in performance? Or is
I would like to do some comedy with it. And I think when I've been teaching improv and taking piano lessons, and also my day job is that I'm a motion graphics artist and video editor, so I think a lot about design. And so I think a lot about how all these art forms intersect. Right. That in design and in comedy and in piano, it's about what is the composition? What is the structure of it? Like if I play, and I was telling this to my students, that what I was trying to tell them is you can come out with anything on an improv stage and it will work for a great scene. Doesn't matter if I come out and say it's really hot outside, that might sound boring and innocuous, but if I play a C chord on a piano, that's boring and innocuous. If I put some red paint on a canvas, nothing interesting about that. It's about what do you do next? What do you do after that? How do you contextualize it? And I am like in this phase where I'm so fascinated about how all these forms have something in common about context and how they work together.
Relevance.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and it happens in real time in the improvisational world. Mm-hmm. So there again, that's where that intellectual fluidity comes into play, because if you really don't have any place to jump off of and you don't know exactly where you're going, it's going to stall. It's just like an aircraft without any lift. It's just going to stall.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that what you're doing, and observational humor to me is the best of the best, because now you're taking things that other people might see, but see it completely different.
Yeah.
And it's a form of also communication, right? So all professional comedians looking at it that way. And Joe, you were probably, from the time you were in the third grade, you got the same marks I did on your report card. Use this time unwisely. I never understood what that was.
Right.
But I didn't care about it because I just
talks too much.
Right. I got those two checked all the time. Talks too much and uses time unwisely. Yeah. Teachers didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
I was a good student, but I got bored quickly. Once I learned the lesson, it was like, I'm on to the next thing, man. And if you're not there with me fast enough, what are we going to do? But talk a little bit about observational comedy or observational humor, how you use it in your own life.
Yeah.
And are you the kind of guy that as you're driving around, walking around, you're always looking for something?
Well, I don't look for, when I was writing more stand-up, I used to look for it more. And I think when I started as a stand-up, I wanted to make the most clever, almost esoteric observations, and I went fine for me, and I think there's a lot of comedians that you're like, and I was not a Stephen Wright type, but people who really have their own like very specific style and
Stephen Wright.
And I think I am more interested these days in kind of what you're saying is making observations that are more broadly relatable. I think when
universal.
More universal. I think when I was younger, I was very much narrow casting, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think just as I've gotten older, I'm more interested in like, how do I bring more of the audience into these observations.
Broaden your base. Right. That comes with age, I think, Eddie. That comes with experience.
I was just going to say, welcome to the aging process.
Yeah, brother. We see the little gray in your beard, sir. We see the little gray there.
As you become older and older, everything becomes more universal.
Yeah.
You realize that the entire human experience is
We're all
one big experience. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Eddie, when you were in L.A., I want to jump back to L.A., the L.A. scene for a minute. You went out there to, I guess, be discovered and have the L.A. experience. What brought you back home, and was it fulfilling, unfulfilling? Do you ever see yourself going back to LA?
Well, I don't think I'll go back to LA to move there. I had a great time. I was there from 2006 to 2012. Auditioned for a lot of things. Very, very happy to have been in a few commercials. Had a line in a movie. Got my
what movie, Eddie? Come on.
It's called For a Good Time Call.
All right.
So I have
SAG eligible.
A SAG.
Eddie was.
Yeah. Well, a SAG member. I mean, I had to pay my dues.
Beautiful.
So beautiful. Very expensive. It was like $2,500.
That's why you got to keep working to pay those dues.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was very proud of myself to get my union card and to work, and that's a great feeling to work as an actor. But I, over time, became less and less interested in being a performer, and this was. Barack Obama had been elected, but Republicans had taken over Congress. I just become, and from a young age, I had been sort of radicalized by punk rock and wanted to change the world. And I still really want to change the world.
Right.
But I became less interested in being a performer and fell into the world of activism at around 2011 and got to meet different people who were working on different things and found that I could essentially just produce, to get very specific, produce videos. I worked with this activist organization that was fighting the AT&T T-Mobile merger in 2011. And I said, which is obviously very wonky and technical. And I said, why don't I produce some videos out here in LA for you? Some comedic parody videos, because there were these T-Mobile ads going on at the time, this woman in a pink dress. And so we did some parody videos. They got a lot of attention, got written up, and I realized this is a way for me to merge what I already have a talent in, creativity and video production, and also get to work on things I care about. And so that took me out of Los Angeles. I was in New York, and
I can attest that it's a quite a heady experience and a fun moment when you get your SAG card, because in '94 I did just enough work to qualify, so that it was a thing. Got your insurance and everything, got your insurance. But I didn't want to tack away too far from the fact that you mentioned something earlier, and I can hear Tito Rossetti yelling at his radio right now, saying, "Mario, ask him about running for office. Ask him about running for office," because you mentioned that you had to go with that. It segues into what you were just talking about, your political activism. So
yeah, absolutely. So I, once I'd gotten into this activism world, I had thought about going back to Florida, and running for something had been in the back of my mind.
Your home state, your beloved home state.
And I think going from, I as we've talked about, a little younger than you guys, but I remember Lawton Childs, Walking Lawton, and this Florida that I remembered that was, this beautiful, diverse place. I mean, and it still is. But then, we got Jeb Bush and then Rick Scott, and I was just like, what is happening here? And wanted to go back and make a change. And I had worked at the Democratic National Committee. I was there in 2016. My emails were hacked by Russia.
Russia, if you're listening, Eddie G's a funny guy.
There's a particular claim. My emails were hacked by Russia.
Yeah. I actually once... I had told my girlfriend at the time that my emails were hacked, and she complained that my emails were boring, which I thought was a little bit hurtful, but I soldiered on. But yeah, so had decided after the 2020 election, after January 6th, that I wanted to come back and I wanted to fight for democracy and fight to turn Florida blue, and so decided to run for Congress in the 15th district.
Quite a step, young man.
Wow.
Quite a step. We
usually you start, at city council, county commission, you climb that ladder.
Yeah. You know what? But
not Eddie.
Not Eddie. Well, here's the thing. It was funny. I was running at the same time as Maxwell Frost over in Orlando.
Who was great.
Maxwell.
Do you know him personally, Eddie?
Yeah, Maxwell.
Oh, come on.
A great guy. Well,
tremendous.
I was introduced to Maxwell by a mutual friend, and we were both getting started at the time, and he was just so wonderful But it was funny, like we were, kind of progressive candidates, 2 younger candidates on different sides of the state. And he obviously, he took off like a rocket. I, alas, did not win my primary, but because I do have those voices of like city council, and I would be honored to serve at any level, truly, and we'll see where the future brings. But I think to be bold and to be brave and to say we need younger and different voices in Congress, I think is still a great thing. And so, it didn't go the way I wanted, but I'm glad it happened for Maxwell, and I'm glad more young folks are running for office.
So it begs the question, Joe. It begs the question before we let Eddie off the air. Eddie, can you help us get Maxwell, Representative Maxwell here?
I would.
Can you help us? Can you help us?
Absolutely.
Because he's really fabulous, and we really would like to speak to him.
He's wonderful. I would love to put in a good.
And maybe you could come back with him, so that way it's we can have a roundtable discussion, the 4 of us.
There you go.
I'd be honored.
I think that would be tremendous. So again, you emceed the Kennedy King dinner this past September, and you were spectacular, Eddie. Remember, I sought you out that night.
That was so sweet of you.
But you were funny, man. You were good.
Thank you.
I did that one year, and I thought I was okay. I'll never do it again. I said, just get Eddie. Wherever he's at, fly him in. Let him be the MC of the show, because you had us really inspired that night.
Oh, thank you.
And as far as, I have another note here to myself, physical comedy. I don't know why I'm jumping back and forth, but Eddie, I hasten to guess you wouldn't have been able to do some of the things you're doing now, laying on the floor, doing the things you do in your improv comedy, had you been the old Eddie.
Well,
now that you're the new Eddie, come on.
Well, here,
do you stretch before you go on stage?
Well, I should stretch.
Yes, you should.
But I don't want to diminish the fact that people in bigger bodies can do amazing things and can be quite athletic and quite nimble. And there's
Paul Blart, the mall cop. Should we talk about that? King of Queens?
I don't think I ever saw that one, but I
King
do
of Queens,
remember
the TV show.
I do remember. But sorry, and I was just gonna say, and I apologize. I know I'm overly cautious and thoughtful about this, but I don't think I'm some better form for being thinner. I'm in a different form and something that works for me. But to each their own. And
that is the political answer, Eddie, and that's why you're going places. We're just gonna say it right now out loud.
And let me just say real quick, you
That's great, Eddie.
You did not ask for my advice, but I would say that now that you have revealed here to us that you have this creative part of your personality and you have this political part of your personality.
Marry those two.
I think however you marry those two in the future, that's going to be your mission in life to do, I think.
I really appreciate that. No, I genuinely.
And did you have anything to do with writing Harry Cohen's last few election cycle television commercials? Because they were fabulous. I mean, they were really, really witty and charming and funny, and especially when he was running for mayor. I don't know if you remember those, Eddie. They were really good.
I wish I could take credit, but no, I didn't.
Take credit anyway, Eddie. I don't know. You could tell me whatever you want to tell me. I wouldn't be able to argue it.
Right.
They were good, though. You remember them?
Well, that's
really
that's
good.
a thing.
Well done.
That's a thing in comedy is you really do not take credit for other people's work, and the people we call them hacks who steal other people's material. Not that that's what you were actually suggesting. It's very verboten. You do not want to take credit for other.
We have
Yes,
a phone
I would
caller
say
that we
so.
need to get to because we're just up against the clock, but I don't want to leave anybody out of the conversation today. Alan, I'm so sorry. We only got a couple of minutes left, but if you've got a quick question, thank you.
I do. So listen, I got in my car like 10 after 12, turned you guys on, and enjoyed the conversation tremendously. And then I got home. I didn't have my phone with me. I just got in the house, and the whole time I'm driving, I'm thinking, Eddie who? And I just would say, if you had just said, for those of you just tuned in, we're talking to Eddie who?
Oh, Eddie Geller. I'm so sorry, Alan. I said it at the bottom
we
of
are
the
here
break,
with Eddie Geller.
And I need to make a note to myself every 15 minutes, to just kind of reintroduce our guest. I'm so sorry, but Eddie Geller. Eddie Geller.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. I'll look for the show now that I know who I'm looking for. Thank you very much.
I bet. Thanks, Alan. Thanks so much for waiting and
Thank
for
you, Alan.
offering your call today. This is the things we get excited in the conversation, which is a great name for a podcast or a radio show.
There you go.
We get excited in our conversation with our guests, and sometimes I forget to reintroduce the show. We've got about a minute and a half left. Eddie, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought for a moment Alan Cohn, who beat me in the primary, was calling just to check in.
Just to say how you doing. How you doing, pal?
Alan and I actually are very good friends now, and so that's politics.
And he's a stalwart in our in the Democratic Party, and still very popular amongst the party.
Yeah.
So Eddie, what's in the offing for you in the last minute and a half here we got?
Well, so folks should check out Salute and Happy Days at the Commodore, and there's plenty of great shows there. You can go to CommodoreComedy.com. I will be doing a farewell show on January 18th, Saturday, January 18th at 8 p.m. at the Commodore Theater. A goodbye show. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm going to tell some stories, and I hope both of you.
We will absolutely be there.
Oh, my
Front row if we can get it. If not, we'll be in the room.
I would say to our listening audience, be there or be square.
Yeah, be in the room where it happens, y'all.
Yeah.
You want to say something about the upcoming show, Joe?
I see him next door.
Yeah.
He's the governor of grooves.
Yes.
Getting ready to play some fantastic tunes for you.
So
guys.
keep it right here on WMNF, everybody. Thank you once again, everybody, for listening. Eddie, you're the best, pal.
Oh.
And we will have you back again because that's what we think about you, man. You're the best.
Well, I appreciate the both of you, and thanks for having me.
Happy holidays. And to everybody that was out there listening today, thank you so very, very much. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. You are listening to WMNF Tampa.